Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is once again my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am excited, yes, again in 2019 as we bring back the BMWOC podcast series for another amazing season. If you guys are following us on mobile apps, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you know what we are all about. And just in case you just finding out who we are an organization that unifies people from around the world to talk about their business and career trends and to educate you on what's going on in terms of business and career and technology, because technology is driving all of this stuff going on right now in 2019. So make sure that you like and share, and don't forget to vote for your favorite podcast participant who is going up against 7 awards that they're trying to win. So make sure you keep your favorite in the running by just like, share, and vote. And also take a moment to visit all of the pages and listen to all the podcast recordings that we have going on, and even take a step further and listen to past years. We have 2016 through 2018 that you can check out and also connect with them, because they may have the answer to what you're looking for. Now, today we have another amazing speaker that we're going to be talking to today. He's an author, and he is also in the ministry field. So this is really going to be exciting because he has a dynamic background, and I can't wait to interview him today. Before we get started, though, we need to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors, who are My Financial Home, Evangelism Radio, J&F Enterprises, Sears Consulting, Autism Families Rock, Awakening to Love, Eli Natoli, Kimberly McLemore, True Synergy, and Platinum Financial Services, along with our other BMWOC participants who's helping to make this season a huge, huge success. So as I said a few minutes ago, we have another dynamic speaker who's going to be talking about his ministry background, and his name is David Finesy, who grew up in downstate Illinois, the second of 4 children in his family. And after graduating from Mount Carmel High School, he attended and graduated from Cincinnati Christian University. Then he went on to Xavier University, also in Cincinnati, for a master's degree in art. He then studied theology for a year at St. Louis University Divinity School, and then he furthered his education at St. Louis Theological Consortium, and from there he took studies to Duke University in North Carolina. Man, he has a lot of educational background, I can say. He has gone on to teaching about the New Testament and the Second Temple Judaism and all different other types of ministry that he has under his belt, along with the publishing of his book, which he is going to be talking about today. So please welcome David to the podcast. David, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So besides all of that I just said about you, because I think I just gave away your whole entire history, just give everybody a sense of, your growing up, things that you were involved in that kind of led you to go into ministry.
Yeah, well, growing up, I had no indication or no tendency to go into ministry. I did grow up in a Christian family, so that wasn't an issue. But I always wanted to be a lawyer. I mean, from the time I was old enough to think about it, I was going to law school and was planning on that. And then in the fall of my senior year, something just began to happen. I would call it a call. I regard it as being called into ministry. I didn't really expect it or want it to happen, but I just realized I can't do law. I would never be satisfied. I'd be miserable. I think if God calls you to do something and you don't do it, you're miserable. I don't know that God will hold it against you, but I think, God kind of knows what you're suited to do. And so it took a big turn. My parents were crushed that I wasn't going to be a lawyer. They thought they had going to have a lawyer in the family. But I went on and studied, did the pre-ministerial class at Cincinnati, and then on to divinity school, and then eventually to my PhD in New Testament. And I've loved every minute of what I've done. So I guess I did right.
Of course, you're always doing right because it sounds like, and based on the bio that I read, is that it just seems like you just really enjoy, as you said, going through the process and going through school and going to all of these different universities, just learning so many different facets of ministry. So, can you speak on some of the things that you like most about ministry, and why would someone even want to go into the area that you have gone through?
Yeah. Well, of course, most of my ministerial life, I have been a teacher, a professor of biblical studies, so teaching young people. And it's teaching in itself is just great fun to influence a young person. But of course, I teach religious studies, so I'm not just teaching, but the content is very important to me. But to see a young person begin to change his or her thinking, and to see the light bulbs going on, and see them begin to get it and to understand, that's a very rewarding thing. But of course, that's the mission of those in ministry, is to teach the gospel, to Christianize those that will allow it, and so it's been a very rewarding thing for me to do it with my life. I've also had pastoral ministries in churches, and those were also, I hate to say they're fun. That uh, sounds like it shouldn't be fun. It ought to be serious, but to help people and to see how people develop and so forth. That's very enjoyable. So the thing I like most, I think, is expounding the Bible, whether it's in a sermon or in a classroom lecture. I think that's what I found most enjoyable. To take a text of the Bible, from the text to the people, and show them how it applies, how it relates to their life. I think that's what I find most enjoyable about what I've done.
Okay, awesome. And if someone wanted to go into ministry, can you give like maybe 2 or 3 preparation tips on what they need to do just to prepare to even go into that field?
Sure. Well, there's so many different types of ministry. They don't all have to do what I've done. More academic emphasis. Um, I would just say, think about what your gift is, or your gifts are. And if you haven't yet gone off to college, you're going to want to have like a few history classes. That's going to be helpful for your biblical studies. Maybe some sociology classes, because you're going to be dealing with groups of people, and these groups are always going to have their own issues in their community. So sociology, of course, psychology, you'll have to do some counseling. People will come to you no matter what kind of, whether you're a youth pastor, you're a senior pastor, you're teaching a professor, people will come to you with just amazing issues and problems. So, some classes in psychology and counseling and so forth would be really helpful for you. And then from there, you just find a seminary that you think you would enjoy going to and fit in, and go for it.
Fabulous, fabulous. And so I'm reading here in your bio also that you were invited, or you were made dean of the Graduate School of Bible and Ministry, and then sort of found time to write books in between all of these lectures that you're doing, because according to your bio that you have over 8,000 lectures in between all of that stuff of teaching. How did you find the time to write books and teach at the same time?
Well, I just don't know. Good question. Of course, in academics, you have the summers off usually. We did have summer school, but I usually didn't teach it myself. I would supervise, but not teach. So you get the summers, and of course, you get a month off at Christmas time, from Christmas till after New Year. So there's about 4 months out of the year, 3.5 months, which you have to do that. But if you're a writer, you just do it. You take a half an hour here, it might take 45 minutes there. Once you get on a writing project, you just have to keep doing it. So I love writing. So that's my three, areas of ministry have been teaching, preaching, and writing. And I love all three. I love, speaking orally, but I also love writing. I just and once I get on a project, it says something about a certain personality. I just have to finish it. So once I got started, I was, as I say, I
You
would
just
find
keep
2 minutes
going.
here, 2 minutes there, and stay late after work, come home and stay up late and till I got it done. So
Okay. So give us some example of some of the books that you wrote and maybe the concept behind it. Were they, because I was wondering, were they just these books that you've written, sparked on different lectures that you've taught, or maybe things that you talked about in your talk with the church, or any of
sure,
those things? Just talk about a little bit there, because I'm curious, because you
sure,
have 10 books, and I would love to hear a couple of them.
yeah. Well, I mean, everything I've written, I have used to enrich my lectures and my preaching. So it all comes out. Now, you don't give everybody, like in a 30-minute sermon, you don't give them all of the details of things that you have written. They don't want to hear that. But it one way or another, you do use it. So I would sort of divide my writing into three phases, and that these three phases kind of follow one stream of New Testament study. So I went to Duke University, where the emphasis was in studying the New Testament from the perspective of Judaism. So as a student, you just immerse yourself into the Jewish literary sources. So I came out of there and wrote a dissertation that was published, but it was a dissertation like that. But then in the mid-'80s, New Testament studies went through a kind of revolution. The '80s were what we call the social science revolution, and a lot of these social movements in the United States, civil rights, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the feminist movement, so the peace movement and civil rights and the feminists, these all came like to a head in the mid-'80s, and New Testament scholars began to ask, what does the New Testament say to us about these things? So I entered my social science phase, and I started writing books in which I was applying, macro sociology, economics, and cultural anthropology to a study of the Bible. And I just found that enormously fascinating to do that. And then in the late '90s, I entered what I would call my archaeology phase, because when you study the Jewish text, you're really reading things written by upper level people. Not everybody can read and write, only the higher level, the literate. So you're not really meeting the ordinary people. But with archaeology, you can meet the ordinary people in various ways. You can see some of the things they had in their house. If you excavate a house, you see what they had in the house. You dig up the floor, and there are all these things they've dropped over the years. You can kind of picture the family. And you can even go so far as to look at their bones, So you get into a tomb and examine their bones, and you can tell, what diseases they had. And so you start meeting the ordinary people through it. So I'm now in my archaeology phase, and I've enjoyed it enormously. I've done several excavations.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You went all over the country: Greece, Italy, Turkey, Jordan, and who did you work with when you were involved in the excavations?
Different people. James Strange, the late James F. Strange, he died about a year and a half ago, but he was a kind of luminary in archaeology in Israel, archaeology in the New Testament period. So I worked with him several seasons, and there was another, Strange is an American, but Rami Arav, an Israeli, I worked with him one season, and various other people. But and learned a lot from all of them. But it helped me then to do the excavations. It helped me when I was reading later on, reading all these reports to understand them, to be able to interpret them. So that's why I want to do the excavation. So I can, when I read the report, I can picture in my mind what they're talking about. So I just found archaeology tremendously helpful. And my current writing project is called The Archaeology of Daily Life, subtitled Ordinary People in the late Second Temple period. So it's about ordinary, how the ordinary people live, not the kings and the queens and the literate folk, but the ordinary folk. So that's
fabulous.
what I'm trying to do at the moment. Yeah.
Right. And so you have a book called As Far as You Can that you submitted that was also in the BMWOC magazine. So tell everybody about this particular book.
Yeah. So this is a work of historical fiction. So based on, what I've learned in New Testament studies, social science background, and archaeological background, I decided to write a work of historical fiction. So the main characters are fictional, but the events are, actual historical events. So I present the history and the culture to the reader by way of a fictional story. And at the same time, I'm a clergyman, I'm a minister, so I try to make a spiritual point in the novel without being too overbearingly preachy. But it's a novel about providence, because providence is a tricky thing. You don't really usually recognize providence until later. It's not something while it's happening you might feel like you're totally miserable, but then later you realize, wow, God really pulled me through that. So it's a story that has to do with providence, and the main characters are struggling because these were just horrific times of violence.
Wow.
And they're struggling with all these things and wondering, where is God? Then they find out, what a tremendous thing happened in their life. But so it's that. So I try to make a spiritual point, but at the same time, I try to educate the readers in the culture and the history that serves as background to the New Testament Gospels. So that's what it is. As far as you can is a kind of the punchline or the main line of a parable you find in the rabbinic literature. So in this parable, a young son goes off from his family, and it says he goes 100 days. In other words, really far for them, and he starts doing things that he's really ashamed of. He does a lot of really shameful things. His father hears where he is, and he sends a letter by a servant. The servant carries a letter 100 days, and the letter says simply, "Son, please come home." The son writes a letter back. The servant goes 100 days back, and the son simply says, "I can't, Father. I'm too ashamed." So the father writes another letter, same servant, 100 days, and the father says, "Son, come as far as you can. I'll meet you the rest of the way."
Nice.
So that's
wow. Okay.
the center. That's the center. That story is the centerpiece of the novel, and it pretty much explains, I think, a lot of what goes on in the story in a wider sense.
Wow. It just seems like you have so many different I don't know how to even word it, David. I mean, just listening to you and all these different areas of history and just everything. It just fascinates me just listening to different stories. And I definitely want to make sure that people also getting this too by having links to your other books here on your website. And so, what has been the impact for those who have been reading your books? And what type of feedback have you been getting to inspire you to write more?
Well, of course, the novel has just come out like a month and a half ago. So One or two. I find that the younger people seem to really enjoy it. They say it's action. What a millennial says it's an action-packed story. It's got to be really action-packed because they're used to
Says
nonstop
action
action at the
packed.
movies. And I don't know if it appeals.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not a millennial by any stretch. I don't know if it appeals to older folk or not because,
Hmm.
I mean, it was just a very violent time. And these people are just like running for their lives all the time. So I don't know that everybody is into that. But so several of the young people have said, I hope they make it into a movie. And I said, please contact somebody, Steven Spielberg or something. But I don't know. But that's what the reaction has been from those, between 15 and 30. That's been their reaction from them.
Wow. So, David, let me ask you, are you going to be attending any events where people can come out and get a copy of your book? Or are you going to be speaking somewhere where they can actually come out and meet you in person?
Well, I will be speaking in a couple of weeks. It's a place called Johnson University in Knoxville. It'll be on April 5th. I think my presentation is about 9 o'clock, maybe. Johnson University, April 5th. It's a Knoxville area place, and I will be presenting a portion of this next book that I'm finishing up now. I'll be presenting part of a chapter of that book, a chapter which I hope will hook the listeners into buying the whole thing when it comes out in a few months.
Okay. What about any other events that you're going to be at maybe after podcast launch?
No, I don't have any other events, any other speaking
Okay.
events after that.
Well, you know what that means, David? That means that people need to click on your page down here and book you to speak so that you can come out and talk more about your books and your background and all that kind of good stuff. Because I want to encourage everyone to just just really like investigate what David has and all of these books that he's written. Because I'm gonna make sure that you have all of them on your page because I think this is definitely fascinating. I have interviewed people in ministry. I have family that was in ministry, but I've never interviewed someone who has written so many books and have done so many things in their life in terms of education and teaching and writing, all at the same token. So I really admire what you're doing and continue to encourage you to keep writing and
Well, thank you.
keep preaching, doing everything. I'm just enjoying all of that, what you're saying.
Thank you. I hope to, as God gives me energy to do it. I still
Oh,
love
no
doing it,
worries.
and I love doing all three things.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad I didn't become a lawyer. I might have done that too, but this has just been an
Hmm.
amazing kind of thing. So I mean, my lesson to people listening, if God gives you a dream, you got to go out and do it. Don't hold back. Just go do it. And I think I think we're called usually according to our talents, and sometimes we don't know our talents. We don't even we don't fully recognize them or realize them. But if you think God's calling you to do something, by all means, go do it.
Absolutely. So give everybody your contact information to where they can find you and your books.
So you can find me on my Amazon page. You can just type in my name, so David. My last name's spelled funny. I mean, it's not the word funny, but it's spelled like the F as in Frank, IENS as in Sam, Y. So it's not pronounced that way, but it's spelled Fiensy. So if you just type in my name at Amazon, it should take you to my Amazon authors page. All my books will be listed there. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. Just type my name in LinkedIn. You can come to see my LinkedIn profile. It'll have a couple of videos. There's a video of my novel, As Far as You Can. There's a video of me being interviewed. There will be 3 of the latest books, not all of them there, but 3 of the latest books highlighted. And there'll be my email address. You're welcome to email me with any questions about anything. I'd be glad to respond.
Awesome. And David has supplied us with links to his videos as well. If you're interested in watching his YouTube channel, of his video, of his latest interview, please make sure you tune in. Also, if you like this interview, please make sure you like, share, and vote for your favorite. Make sure you check out everything that he has to offer, including all of the participants that we have this year. And so I want to thank you, David, for being part of the movement and joining in this cause to educate people in different areas of your field. So thank you so much.
And thanks for having me.